At 67, I believed I had encountered every type of loss life could present. I was mistaken. On a stormy afternoon, a tornado swept through Maple Ridge, Kansas, destroying the home where I had raised my son and buried my husband's memories. When I arrived at my son Evan's doorstep, seeking solace and refuge, the words I encountered cut deeper than any storm. We need privacy. My girlfriend does not want you here. I'm Pauline Mercer, and this tale is not solely about devastation but also about how love can resurface when you least expect it. When my own family shut the door, I reached for a number I had kept for 50 years. A faded card bearing the name of my first love, Graham Ellison. No one knew I still possessed it. I never imagined I would make that call. Yet, in that moment, alone with 3 garbage bags in a borrowed car, I dialed. The man who answered was not merely a memory. He was alive, thriving, and his steady voice was just as I remembered from high school. When he found me standing in that parking lot with nothing left, he uttered 3 words that altered everything. You look beautiful. The afternoon started like any other Tuesday. In my Maple Ridge kitchen, I brewed tea around 3 o'clock as I always did. The weatherman had warned of storms, but that was routine in Kansas. I had endured countless spring tempests. Yet this time, the sky shifted in an unsettling way that made my stomach drop. It turned a sickly green-black hue, a color I had never witnessed before. The air felt heavy, charged with a sense of danger. At 3:15 the sirens wailed, their pitch slicing through my kitchen's calm. I grabbed the emergency radio and heard words no one wants to hear. Large tornado on the ground, moving northeast toward Maple Ridge subdivision. That was my neighborhood. I had maybe 10 minutes to decide what to say from a lifetime. My hands trembled as I pulled an old suitcase from the closet, filling it with memories rather than essentials. My wedding photo with Harold, baby pictures of Evan, my mother's pearl necklace, a few important documents, a handful of jewelry, 43 years of life condensed into one bag. The basement was dark and colder than usual as I crouched in the corner, clutching Harold's worn sweater. The noise that followed resembled a freight train tearing through the world above me. Wood splintered. Metal groaned. The house Harold had once cherished fought against forces far beyond what nails and beams could withstand. Then silence. A silence so profound it made my ears ring. When I finally climbed the steps again, my legs felt weak. Where my living room once stood, only sky remained. My rose garden looked as if a giant blender had torn it to pieces. The kitchen table, where Evan had done his homework, was jammed into the garage's broken wall. Amid the ruins of my life, I cried for the first time since Harold's funeral 8 years prior. The next morning I walked through the wreckage with an insurance adjuster, a young man who seemed barely old enough to rent a car. He carried a clipboard, snapped photos with a digital camera, and never once met my gaze. To him this was routine, to me it was everything. After a brief survey, he delivered 2 words that felt like a verdict. Total loss. I swallowed hard. What does that mean for me? He cleared his throat and pointed to numbers on his sheet. Your policy covers $120,000 on the structure. With depreciation and deductible, you're looking at maybe $90,000, maybe less, he said like a cashier announcing a grocery total. $90,000 to replace 43 years of life. I stared at the broken beams surrounding me. That amount couldn't rebuild Harold's workshop, replace my rose beds, or restore the dining room where birthdays had been celebrated. It certainly couldn't give me back the feeling of safety that had vanished in one violent hour. I thanked the adjuster out of habit, though he had given me nothing but figures. By the time Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor, helped me load my few belongings into her car, I had accepted a truth I didn't want to face. I had no home. Just 3 garbage bags of clothes, 1 battered suitcase of photographs, and Harold's old toolbox that had somehow survived under a pile of debris. That was all. After Mrs. Patterson dropped me off, I sat in the borrowed car with my heart racing. There was only one person left to call. My son Evan, my only remaining family. I hoped he would open the door. Evan lived 45 minutes away in Overland Park, a neighborhood of wide streets, manicured lawns, and homes that looked polished enough for magazine covers. Driving through felt like entering a world where nothing bad ever happened. My car reeked of mud and mildew, and I felt like an intruder carrying disaster into their perfect world. His house was beautiful, with white shutters and a red front door chosen by his girlfriend Sloane. hesitating on the porch with 3 bags at my feet. I hadn't even knocked when the door swung open. Evan stood there, tall and composed, wearing the cautious smile he used in business meetings. Sloane appeared almost instantly, her blonde hair pulled into an effortless bun. "Mom," Evan said, stepping aside. His voice felt distant. I set my bags down in the immaculate entryway, suddenly aware of the smell clinging to my clothes. Wet wood, mud, and something heavier: destruction. "It's only temporary," I explained. "Just until the insurance clears and I find an apartment." Evan glanced at Sloane. In their silent exchange, the decision was already made. "Let's sit and talk," he said, leading me into a living room so pristine it felt like a showroom. White sofa, glass tables, windows so clean they seemed to vanish. I perched on the edge, careful not to leave marks. Evan leaned forward, his tone rehearsed. "Mom, we need to be honest. Sloane and I value our privacy. We work long hours. This house is our sanctuary," Sloane added gently. "It's not about trouble, it's about space. You'd be more comfortable somewhere else. An extended stay hotel, maybe." Evan nodded. "I could help with a few hundred to get you started." The words felt like a door closing. Not welcome. Not here. Not home. Tears burned behind my eyes as I drove away from Evan's house, though I refused to let them fall until I was alone. Mrs. Patterson's borrowed car rattled as I parked in a Walmart lot on the town's outskirts. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange over rows of shopping carts and flickering streetlights. This wasn't home, but it was the only shelter I had. That first night I reclined the seat, clutching Harold's toolbox as if it could keep me safe. Sleep eluded me. Every time a car pulled in or a security guard's truck rolled by, I froze, terrified they would notice the 67-year-old woman living out of a vehicle. By morning my neck ached, my clothes smelled stale, and I couldn't bear to look in the restroom mirror while washing my face. The second night was worse. My cash dwindled to less than $100. I bought a gas station sandwich that tasted like cardboard and loneliness. I brushed my teeth at McDonald's, avoiding the pity in strangers' eyes. Pride kept me silent, but inside I felt hollow. By the third night, shame had settled into my bones. I rummaged through my purse for coins and found something else instead. A faded business card, edges softened from decades of being carried. Graham Ellison. His name printed in blue ink. A number below that I wasn't sure still worked. On the back, in my own 17-year-old handwriting, I had written 4 words. "Do not forget me." Staring at that card, my heart raced. I told myself it was absurd. 50 years had passed. He must have built a life, a family, a world without me. Yet, in the darkness of that parking lot, I whispered his name like a prayer. On the 4th morning, exhaustion overcame pride. I held the card in trembling hands and finally dialed the faded number. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, deeper now but still familiar. "Morrison Development. This is Graham." My throat closed. For a heartbeat I almost hung up. But something in his warm, steady tone gave me courage. "Graham, it's Pauline. Pauline Mercer." Silence stretched long enough for me to fear he wouldn't remember me. Then he said my name softly, like he was touching a memory. "Pauline." The words spilled out before I could stop them. "My house was destroyed in the tornado. Evan doesn't want me with him. I have nowhere to go. I'm in a parking lot in Tulsa. I'm sorry to bother you after so many years." He interrupted, firm but kind. "Tell me where you are." "I'm coming now." I tried to argue, but he only repeated himself. "Pauline, give me the address." "I'm already walking to my car." 2 hours later, a silver sedan pulled into the lot, moving slowly between rows of vehicles. My heart raced as I recognized him the moment he stepped out. 50 years had added silver to his hair and lines to his face, but his storm gray eyes remained the same. He walked with quiet confidence, scanning until his gaze landed on me. When he reached my window, he smiled and tapped gently. "Hello, Pauline." I rolled the window down, ashamed of my wrinkled clothes and tired eyes, but he looked at me with nothing but tenderness. "You look beautiful," he said, and for the first time in days I allowed myself to believe I was safe. Graham loaded my 3 garbage bags and Harold's old toolbox into the back of his car, as if they were treasures. He opened the passenger door for me, his movements calm and deliberate, leaving no room for argument. The drive felt surreal. We passed rolling hills and neat neighborhoods until we turned through iron gates marked Prairie Creek Way Estates. His driveway curved beneath tall oaks, ending at a stone house with wide porches. Elegant, not flashy, a home built to last. He showed me to the guest wing. The bedroom was larger than my old living room, with windows overlooking gardens and a bathroom featuring a soaking tub. I stood awkwardly, afraid to disturb anything. Graham only smiled. "Make yourself comfortable, Pauline. This house has been too quiet for too long." In the first week I tiptoed through the halls like a guest, but Graham was patient. Gradually we fell into a rhythm. In the mornings he brewed coffee while I sat on the porch, watching finches dart among feeders. In the afternoons we walked his property, where he showed me the greenhouse where he raised orchids. In the evenings we cooked together. He moved easily around the kitchen, but when I prepared a pot roast from an old family recipe, he declared it the best meal he had tasted in years. No one had appreciated my cooking like that in a long time. One night by the fireplace, Graham shared that he had once proposed to another woman but had called off the wedding. I asked why. He met my eyes and simply said, "Because it was not you." For the first time since the storm I felt I could breathe again. It wasn't long before Evan noticed I was no longer calling from motels or shelters. One afternoon my phone lit up with his name. "Mom, where are you staying? Mrs. Patterson said you left the extended stay place." I hesitated. "With a friend," I replied. "A friend?" His voice carried disbelief. "You don't have friends with money." I held back the sting of his words and replied calmly, "You'd be surprised." From that moment on the calls increased. Initially, he posed polite questions about my health, but soon the conversations always drifted to Graham. "What kind of business is he in? How long have you known him? Does he have investments in Kansas City?" His curiosity was less about me and more about opportunity. Sloane joined the effort in her way. Expensive candles arrived at my door, followed by gourmet chocolates and a silk scarf, each gift accompanied by a card penned in her careful handwriting. "So happy you have found love again. Hope we can start fresh." Each package felt like a peace offering with strings attached. During dinners, Evan tried to reinvent himself as the devoted son, sharing stories of how grateful he had always been for my sacrifices and how he admired my strength. He smiled warmly, but his eyes strayed to Graham, measuring him, weighing possibilities. I sat across the table listening, aware it was revisionist history. Graham never directly called him out, but under the table, he squeezed my hand, steady and reassuring. His silent message was clear. "I see what's happening. You're not alone." One evening, Graham informed me he had invited Evan and Sloane for dinner. His voice was calm but firm. "It's time we clear the air, Pauline." I spent the day anxious, unsure of his plans. When they arrived, Maria served a beautiful meal, and for a while the conversation remained light. But once coffee was poured, Graham leaned back in his chair and spoke with a steadiness that left no room for doubt. "I want to discuss expectations," he began. "Evan, you've shown a new level of interest in your mother since she came to live here. You often ask about my business, my investments, my plans. But I remember the night Pauline had nothing and needed a place to stay. That night, you and Sloane said you needed privacy. You called this house your sanctuary. You closed the door on her." Evan shifted in his chair, his face flushing red. "That's not fair," he muttered. Graham's voice remained unwavering. "What's not fair is treating your mother as a burden when she struggles and as an asset now that she's secure. If you want to be part of her life because you love her, you're welcome. But if you're here for what you think you might gain, then you're wasting everyone's time." The room fell silent. Sloane stared at her hands, her lips pressed tight. Evan looked at me, then at Graham, his jaw clenched. For once, he had no rehearsed lines. Graham's words had drawn a line in the sand. A line that finally placed me at the center of the story, not on its edge. 6 months after the storm, Graham asked me to marry him. There was no dramatic proposal. No ring hidden in champagne. He simply took my hands one morning on the porch and said, "Pauline, I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're my wife." My answer was yes. Before he finished the sentence, we chose a quiet ceremony in his back garden. The October air was crisp, the trees brushed with gold, and the sky clear as glass. I wore a simple blue dress that Graham said matched my eyes. He donned a charcoal suit that made him look distinguished and strong. Inviting Evan was the hardest decision. I told Graham I was unsure, but he gently reminded me. He's your son. You'll regret not giving him a chance. So I called him. Evan, we're getting married on October 15th. You're welcome to come, but Sloan is not invited. His silence lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally he said, Mom, you hardly know this man. I replied quietly, I've known him longer than I knew your father when I married him. On the wedding day, Evan arrived alone. He was polite, reserved, and watched carefully. But when the minister pronounced us husband and wife, I felt lighter than I had in decades. This time the vows were not a performance, they were about truth. After the wedding, life settled into a rhythm that felt both new and deeply familiar. Graham and I shared mornings over coffee, afternoons in the garden, evenings by the fire. For the first time in years I hummed while cooking dinner, my heart growing lighter with each passing day. Evan began calling again, but his tone had shifted. Instead of questions about Graham's business, he asked about my roses, whether I had joined a book club, how I was feeling. The conversations were shorter, less polished, almost genuine. It wasn't the closeness I had once dreamed of, but it felt honest. Perhaps honesty was a stronger foundation than forced affection. Sloan faded from the picture. No more packages on my doorstep. No more carefully worded cards. It was as if she decided that if she couldn't control the situation, she would remove herself entirely. Part of me was relieved. Part of me felt sad that her connection to me had only ever been through calculation. I began to view my son differently. He was still the boy I had rocked through fevers, the young man I had supported through college, but he was also a man who had made choices that revealed his flaws and limits. I couldn't rewrite him. All I could do was accept what he was willing to give and protect the peace I had finally found. Looking back now, I see the tornado in a new light. Initially, it represented pure destruction, ripping away everything familiar. But over time, I realized it also cleared space for something new. Losing the house taught me what was truly essential in my life and what was merely decoration. Love, dignity, and respect. Those were the beams that truly supported me. Living with Graham showed me that age is no barrier to starting anew. He didn't see a burden or a broken woman. He saw someone worth cherishing. His steady presence reminded me daily that love isn't about drama or grand gestures. It's about showing up, listening, and choosing each other again and again. With Evan, the relationship isn't perfect. Perhaps it never will be. But it's real now, not a performance. That alone is progress. I no longer measure my worth by how much space I occupy in his life. Instead, I measure it by the peace I feel in my own. The storm tore apart my old world but gave me the chance to build another. Sometimes when you lose everything, you finally discover what you truly need. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and let me know your city in the comments below.